have your attention, please? I'm John Sangenberger. I'm Director of Alumni Relations at the Tepper School of Business at Carnegie Mellon University. We're delighted to have a full house here this morning. We may have a couple of late arrivals coming in to join us, so we'll try to get them seated while we're doing this introduction. But if you do need any more coffee or anything like that, grab it right now because we are videotaping today's presentation. So those who weren't able to join us this morning will be able to see it sometime in the near future on Alumni Lifelong Learning at the Tepper School, or they will be able to participate, hopefully, in a future event with us with Dr. Boatwright. We're glad to have you here this morning. Thanks for getting up so bright and early in the dark to come down to the Rivers Club for our breakfast. Dr. Peter Berwick is Associate Professor of Marketing at the Tepper School of Business at Carnegie Mellon University. He's the author of a new book, The Design of Things to Come, How Ordinary People Design Extraordinary Products. So he's done that in cooperation with a number of his colleagues in the engineering school and the design school. So what you see today is really representative of Carnegie Mellon University and the intense collaboration that goes on across schools and departments across the campus. So not only do we have, even represented here this morning, we have lots of Tepper alumni, but we have engineering and CFA alums and HNSS alums. So we've got a broad representation of our alumni community here in the Pittsburgh area. Dr. Boatwright received his PhD from the University of Chicago and has been very active with us on the campus, teaching not only in the Tepper School, but teaching students from the other departments across campus. And he's been a great road warrior for us over the last year or so, traveling and speaking at alumni events in San Francisco and Seattle and up in the Northeast and across the country. So we've really appreciated his passion for Carnegie Mellon and his great insights that he brings us in his presentation. So join me this morning in welcoming Dr. Peter Berwick.
John mentioned that there's a lot of collaboration at CMU. At times I will say words like we instead of I. And in particular, Professor John Kagan in mechanical engineering is somebody I work closely with. And so that's who I'm referring to, and maybe other professors who I'll mention along the way. Managing creativity, words like innovation. This is the domain in which not only I'm speaking today, but in which I work and teach. Imagine yourself in a situation where your CEO is somewhat giving you some new instructions, some additional instructions now that your company is running efficiently, now that you're lean and mean, have cut costs. Creating new value is the new name of the game that your CEO is asking. Or maybe you are the CEO and you're trying to inspire your employees to create new products, new services, something extra to do now that the machine of the corporation is humming along nicely. So then what do you do? Who do you hire? What tasks do you give your hires to do each day? How do you check them? These are the kinds of issues that I'll briefly touch on in our short time together. I've got to learn how to use this. There we go. So if I'm going to talk about innovation, let me give you at least a brief idea of what I'm referring to. So here's a few products, some of my favorites for my road shows. On this end is the Kitchenaid waffle baker. A waffle baker, in case you don't know what a waffle baker is, it's a waffle iron. A nice new word. There's a significant premium on a waffle baker. Whirlpool is the same company as Kitchenaid, and reportedly they actually make more money per waffle baker than they do per refrigerator. So this is a significant margin on that particular innovation. Old technology, nice new innovation, nice profits. Motorola Razr is probably familiar to all of us. When it came out, it was a $500 phone. The Palm 5, I think that this is the 5 or the 4. Well, subtract 1 if I'm referring to the wrong number. I've forgotten the exact numeral. But the Palm, actually this particular unit was identical to its predecessor. Technologically, it had a nice aesthetic on the exterior. It was a $150 premium for the exterior. And then this, my slides are a little washed out, sorry about that, but this is a Whirlpool washer-dryer combination, the Duet. And this particular set is, prior to the advent of this set, washer dryers were rarely sold as combos. I think 19% of purchases were purchased both a washer and dryer together. What happened is that people, if one unit went out, you bought a replacement. You didn't buy both to make them match. Well, in this particular set, over 80% of these are purchased in combination, and Whirlpool has been able to raise the price over the lifetime of this product more than 3 times. So these are all, you can say, innovations, but for the most part, these are pretty old technology areas. We don't necessarily think of innovations with older products. So let me show you an example from class before oh, I've got to learn how to click. I don't know if I can click with this particular device. All right, so here's an example from class. I can show you some of the more details of what we do in the classroom, less details of what we might do with companies. New Balance was the sponsor of a class a few years ago, a class in which we combine mechanical engineers, industrial designers, and business students together to address some real needs of the company, of the sponsor company. New Balance's challenge now and 3 or 4 years ago partly was due to the more sedentary nature of our population. New Balance is an athletic apparel company, and as America exercises less and less, that's not such good news for a company that focuses on athletics. So what they brought to our class and our students was the challenge of create a product for us which addresses the needs of a more obese population in a way that's consistent with our brand of an athletic apparel company. So this is an exciting challenge to give to our students, and I'll show you one of the products that they came up with. So part of innovation needs to be responsive to the changing needs of society. And in the small text, one of the things that points out is that men who are ages 40 to 55 are a particularly good target for, or they fit this demographic of being more and more sedentary, but they also are a good target for new products in the sense that money is not really the constraint. The strain is time. Knowledge isn't a constraint either. The men typically are educated well enough to know that they need exercise. They just typically have so many other demands on their time. Then the problem is that they do not get the exercise that they need. So income was fine. So this was particularly giving the background fabric for this group in terms of addressing the needs of that market. Okay, so innovation to a great extent has to focus on people because, of course, why innovate if it's not for the purpose of improving somebody's life in a way that they would buy the service or the product that you're producing. So in appropriate manner, we had to study people. Here's 2 personas, scenarios of some individuals who were in the target market. Doug, 50 years old, 6'2", weighs 250 pounds. Due to the fact that his father recently passed away, gives him extra incentive to go out and exercise. Is there a way that you can use it, have a product to come in at that point in time to allow Doug to act on his new incentive and actually change his own lifestyle so that he'll get the health needs that he has? Bob is similar, not having the best time. Okay, so the product that this student team, I'm skipping lots of steps of course, but the product that this student came up with embedded into an existing New Balance product, an insole. So the idea here was to create a pedometer that would be hidden away in the insole to count the steps and track the amount of exercise that an individual getting. The key insight which led to this was that exercise isn't something that we have to dedicate a portion of our day to. Exercise actually can be accumulated throughout the day if we have some kind of active lifestyle. So there are programs like you might have heard of like 10,000 steps, where if you actually go 10,000 steps in a day, walking to your car here and there, walking the dog, walking on the factory floor, wherever you're accumulating those steps, if you get up to some high numbers, thousands of steps, you actually don't need to go to the gym and get any exercise because you've already gotten plenty. If you're going to accumulate exercise in that fashion, of course, you have to track it, which makes pedometers a whole lot more useful. So for somebody who is getting back into exercise, ages 40, 55, who hasn't maybe exercised for 10, 15, 20 years, they're not going to get to 10,000 steps immediately. but they maybe want to set goals and build up, and they probably want to do so discreetly, not advertise to everybody that, hey, I have an issue with exercise, I'm trying to catch up. So this is a discrete product. There's a key fob, which doesn't necessarily look like a pedometer, but wirelessly, the counts from the insole wirelessly get transmitted to the key fob so that the individual can see how far that they've gone in each day. Okay, so here's a quick scenario. Doug, our persona, might put on his work shoes in the morning, go to work. There's a memory chip in the insole, and so Doug does not have to carry his keys with him at all times, leaves his keys on his desk next to that pastry which he hasn't touched. All right. Then he comes back later at about lunchtime. He still hasn't touched his pastry, somebody pointed out, still up there in the right-hand corner. He looks and sees how far he's gone. When he gets home, he transfers the insoles to a different pair of shoes, takes his dog for a walk. Partway through the walk, he can check how far he's gone and see if he might want to walk the dog a little bit further in order to achieve his 10,000 step goal. So Doug's doing very well because 10,000 steps is a long way. Right. When we're focusing on individuals, on their specific needs, a holistic set of needs, wants, and desires, the details of the product start to matter in extraordinary ways. So here's a few details. Doug's wanting comfort. Exercise is not a comfortable activity. So in giving the feeling of comfort, the rounded edges, the ease of putting this key fob in and out of a pocket would help exude and support this need for comfort even during the athletic activity. Discreteness is another something I mentioned earlier. Rather than emblazoning a bright red logo, making this an exercise product, it's discreetly stamped on the back so that he's not having to advertise to other people that he's trying to accumulate his exercise. So this is an example, by the way, to advertise the abilities of our students. Our students produce prototypes and business plans around all of these products that we put together in class. So this was actually made by students, both the key fob and the device, which had technology in it. So some of our engineers actually created the, bought things off the shelf, put together the speedometer in the insole, and got it working. So they produce a functional prototype and one that looks nice, that's form, or marry the two together and actually have a fairly final looking product, as well as a business plan around it. So that's an example from class. Getting back to definitions and thinking about, all right, well, what is innovation? Here we've had a few examples, products out in the marketplace, products created in class. Innovation, rather than being really just a push on technology, a scientific advance, it's really just simply a focus on customer value, a step forward, an increase in what people get out of a product. This is, I find, a very liberating definition in the sense that if you're an automobile company, rather than assigning employees to create a nice new product, which is an automobile, the next in a series, what new car do I produce? Now you have the freedom to think about what new ways can I add value to my customer base. It may not be a car. If it's Dell, who's normally producing computers, faster and faster computers, Dell may not next produce a computer. Apple didn't produce a computer when it brought out an iPod. It was adding value to society. So it's liberating. It's not, if you think about Theodore Levitt's famous phrase from the 50s or 60s, where looking at the railroad industry and reminding them they're not just in the railroad industry, they're in the transportation industry. This is yet another much broader definition, similar to the vice chairman of GM's recent quote. He said, GM, we aren't in the transportation industry, we're in the arts and entertainment industry. Okay, thinking about the broad set of ways that GM can add value to people as they're driving down the road. Right. Okay, so back to the opening question of, well, what would you do if you're trying to achieve innovation with your employees? There's a lot of common ways to achieve innovation, all of which are good. So hiring the right people. You can hire them, put them on staff, and wait for them to come up with something. Maybe you don't just wait. Maybe you create some incentives so that it's in their best interest to create some new products and count on the invisible hand of economics, which functions oh so well in many cases. You can create diversity, interdisciplinary teams. I mean, this has been a strategy of Carnegie Mellon, as John Sangenberger mentioned earlier, and this also works quite well. Information. Innovation must rely on information in terms of the changing needs, the trends in society. You can make sure that your employees are adequately informed so that they bring out products which are at the right time in the right place. All these are good steps. I think of these steps as building a greenhouse. There, get really close and it definitely works. So this is building an environment in which innovation can occur, can be fostered. Doesn't necessarily mean that people know what to do day in and day out. What tasks do you assign your employees? This is creating an environment which is good for them to innovate, they have the right incentives, but still as a manager, what do you tell them to do each day? What we teach are tasks, the daily tasks, to work in this environment. So if you think in terms of my analogy of a greenhouse, you can do the work of innovation outside of a greenhouse and you have more challenges to face. If you're going cross against incentives, you've got an uphill climb. It's nice to work within an environment which is appropriately for growing new products, growing plants. If you just build the greenhouse, you can cross your fingers and hope that the right kinds of plants would grow the right kinds of new products, but it's nice to marry the two, where you equip people to know exactly what daily tasks to do inside the environment which you've created to foster innovation. So let me show you a quick overview of our approach. This analogy, I think, is the best summary. Thinking of products in this analogy of problems and solutions, you wouldn't really create a solution by itself. Coming up with a solution, it seems to be a waste of energy. What you really want to focus on, of course, is thinking about the problems, understanding the problems. Once you understand the nature of a problem, you can create a host of solutions and pick the best solution. The same with a product. The product is an answer to needs, wants, desires, opportunities out in the marketplace. We spend a lot of effort down here, or over here, wherever you want to put it, in understanding opportunities, researching the needs in the marketplace, researching existing technologies for meeting those needs, and only then do we create a host of products and choose the best of those particular products, thinking of them as solutions. So here's another way to frame that process. This earlier two stages, identifying needs, understanding the needs. This would be researching the opportunities. In classes, when we have a 16-week semester, the first 8 weeks are focused here without ever addressing the needs of a product, understanding the marketplace needs in depth. The latter part, conceptualizing, realizing, those are creating the solutions for the needs that have been understood earlier on. The heart of this particular process ends up being the value opportunity analysis. These are general needs of people in the marketplace. These are reasons why they buy products. At the same time that these are human needs and human desires, these are qualities of products. So easier to think of qualities of products down here, the craftsmanship of a product, the durability of a product. And at the same time, products evoke emotions. Think of that first slide with the Motorola Razor, the Waffle Baker. Those weren't pure functional products. They had aesthetics. They would look very nice in your $100,000 kitchen upgrade. All right, so they evoke a sense of pride and so on. These are written at an appropriately balanced level in that you can think of there's a lot more qualities such as maybe robustness of a vehicle, and yet these broader categories, robustness would fit under reliability. So this is a nice balance to keep the list somewhat small, but still to help your company or the students to address a broad set of needs of the customers, a humanly broad set of needs. What we do in our work is put this together in a chart after appropriately tailoring the definitions, and then identify, relative to competitors, which of the needs are ones to go after for a particular product. This ends up being a profitable exercise, as I want to quickly walk through. If we think about value in terms of what the customer gets out, and dollars in terms of what they're willing to pay. Well, it's tautological that price would be going up, all right, as people are getting more value, they're going to be willing to pay more. But eventually, due to budget constraints, alternative products, they're not going to pay an infinite amount. Costs tend to marginally get more and more. It gets more and more expensive to add a little bit more value. So if we think of a hypothetical product which is already maximized on technology, and think of a single consumer, an individual that we're selling to rather than a marketplace with diverse tastes, you would want to maximize your profits by finding the largest gap between what people are willing to pay and your costs. You could add more value, new technologies, but it would get expensive enough to where you'd actually be decreasing your profits. Thinking of this in terms of what if we add some non-technological value? All right. So this is pure technology, pure function. What if we add some, a nice case around it, an up-to-date aesthetic? Typically, those aesthetics, they're not so expensive initially. So adding on the nice look and feel, the careful study of ergonomics isn't so expensive, and yet there is an initial jump in what people are willing to pay. So instead of pricing over in the earlier, lower region, you can actually price out further. And this is a win-win situation. Greater profits for you as a company, but look, you're further out in terms of value for the customer. The customer's happier, and so are you. So marrying both form and function is certainly a win-win situation for all of us. To give you a quick, very simple illustration, this particular research study was conducted with Melissa Appel, who's now at Bright Innovation. She was a PhD student working with John Kagan and myself. And it was a study of packaging, because this was an attribute of the product we could easily change, and it's pure aesthetics. So we had a Carnegie Mellon mug. You may have one in your own home. It's a particular popular seller among alumni. We did an experiment where we gave away this mug in this box, and the students would open it up. Our respondents were students, and they would have the mug. Or we'd give it away in this box, and we had two separate groups of people we gave these to. What we found is when we did our scientific study, sample size, appropriate sample size and all, that the students who got their mug in the black, nicer looking box were willing to pay $1.39 more for the mug than the students who had gotten their mug in the very functional, not particularly beautiful box. Now the black box only cost 50% more, 50 cents more for us to buy in bulk. So, thinking in terms of profits, that's not too bad of a profit decision just to change the packaging. Now, if you've ever ordered an Apple computer and it comes in the mail, the shipping container of the Apple computer is amazingly nice. It sounds really strange. You've already bought your Apple computer, and yet you get this shipping container which they've invested some extra cents into. Why would they do that? It could raise brand equity, willingness to pay for future products, word of mouth, potential good reasons for investing even in packaging. One last example. That's right, I need to click. This is from International Truck, who sponsored our class the past 2 years. And we don't have any of these particular individuals in here, although Jim Cipriani was in this class and had a different product. We had 5 teams in this particular class addressing some of the interior needs of these long-haul trucks, the semi-trucks that we all love to drive next to on the highway. All right. Well, those trucks are fairly Spartan on the interior, and International was trying to make the interior more like a home. Some of the changes that were important, economics, there's a huge turnover in terms of fleets. There's more than 100% turnover per year in terms of fleet drivers. So the economics, it's expensive to retrain these drivers, get new who are certified, retain them. There's some important economic incentives to making them stay with your company, or hoping and giving them the incentives to stay. Social, truck drivers to a great extent are business people, or they like to think of themselves as business people. They're certainly owner-operators. They're running their own business. They own their own business. They have logs and books and cash flow, the same kinds of things all of us have. And yet, they don't really think of themselves as being viewed by society as business people. So this is a social trend that has been ongoing for a long time. Their workspace certainly doesn't look like an office, doesn't act like an office. So these were some social needs to address. The team that I'm going to highlight their product, they wanted to create an office solution that would fit into a truck. Right. Part of their study was to see existing practices. Where does the truck driver conduct their current office work? Well, they conduct it in the driver's seat of the vehicle. So this is a layout of the interior of a long-haul truck. There's the driver's seat. Typically after a long day at the wheel, the driver just stays put, grabs a clipboard or maybe nothing at all, and does their work on the steering wheel as far as the paperwork. They can set their files and papers anywhere in the truck because all of it's reachable. These are very small spaces. They can reach their bed from the driver's seat. They can reach everywhere. So this would be a task analysis of what's currently conducted. These are examples of the current kinds of opportunities. I mean, there's a clipboard that they can attach. There's a desk unit in the back which pulls out. It's flimsy. You couldn't lean on it to write, so that's not a solution. There's a lap board. So there's this whiteboard which fits in a seat pocket. Nobody reaches around to pull it out. It's not worth the effort. So these are currently the competitors for having a desk. And here's the solution that the team came up with. Let me run through a scenario to show you. We, as professors, we required them, given the variety of sizes of truck drivers, we needed their solution to accommodate the needs of smaller and larger drivers. So you get both. So Chet and Brandon, they could swivel their driver's chair. This particular desk would fit on the back of the passenger seat. Lower the passenger seat. They have a storage area for pens and paper. The storage area in the back would hold the laptop. And forget that. There we go. So they can cantilever it towards them to put their laptop on the desk, and they can do their paperwork. Given the skills of our mechanical engineers, all this was spec'd out. International sent us seats from their supplier, American Seating, and our mechanical engineers actually designed and redid the seat, not only the specs, but actually physically redesigned it, and to show the supplier how exactly they would need to redesign the seat to have it swivel in one motion. It was very important to swivel in one motion because truck drivers in their fatigue, they don't take any effort. And if it's if they have to push and pull to get that seat down, they won't do it. One example from talking with a truck driver, there was a bed in one of the truck units where they could actually pull the bed down from a wall and push it back up to create more space. As I talked to drivers, they said, no, if the bed were up, I would just watch TV sitting in this chair, and I would never pull it down night after night. I'd just fall asleep watching TV. And I found that over and over and over. Even to get the bed down to fall asleep and have more comfortable sleep, these drivers wouldn't take that extra effort. So part of the requirements, understanding the marketplace needs, was zero effort, or almost zero effort, in terms of the solutions we're providing. Those kinds of understanding of the marketplace would be coming through filling out these charts, understanding market needs in a holistic sense, the independence, helping the driver perform their work independently, allowing them to have confidence that they're doing it correctly. The ease of use was huge in terms of the needs of this particular marketplace. So, this particular sponsor, International Truck, was quite pleased with the work of our students. We had 5 different projects, and they ended up patenting, or filing for patents, I should say, for all 5 of these. Now, they've ended up moving forward with some of these, and variations on some of these are actually going to appear in a truck, in a 2008 model truck, which now has been locked down and frozen in terms of its design. So this was something we're very proud of our students for producing. International came back and sponsored the following year, and International has just told us that they're planning on filing patents on all 5 of last year's projects as well. So kudos to the students in our classes here. Opportunities for you to learn more in case you want to know more. There's a couple of books that may interest you. This is one I'm a co-author on, Design of Things to Come. To find this, you can type my name in Amazon.com, and I think this is the only book I've written, so it's going to be the top of the list. Right. My co-authors have written a predecessor book, Kagan and Vogel, Creating Breakthrough Products. The top book, Creating Breakthrough Products, is more textbooky, much more detailed if you're wanting that in-depth study. This one is lightweight, reading for the plane as you're traveling over to California. You can read the whole thing in one sitting. Much more enjoyable, all right? But it lacks some of the depth that you might want to get. So I would recommend this first, quick reading, and then if you want more details, go ahead and get the second one. Of course, we teach traditional types of classes like the ones I've run through. We're even working with software. I've taught a class out at our West Coast campus on software. I'm currently teaching the same kind of sequence on campus. We're creating a software product. It's a process for innovation. Doesn't matter whether you apply to services, software. It's a process. Okay. Increasingly, as the needs of education are changing, we're finding companies don't have time to send their employees off to school for a couple of years or 3 years, however long it takes them to be trained. But increasingly, companies are creating their own universities or tailoring programs. And so John Kagan and I are working with a couple of companies right now. We're going in and training their employees. But it's not just training. We're guiding them on these kinds of projects. They're not only getting training out, but they're getting products out as well. So that's a particularly interesting evolution of the work that we're doing, where we're helping companies in-house with their employees create new opportunities, new business opportunities. Consulting, we've done some of that as well, both on the branding side and also in even changing stage gate process or putting a front end on the stage gate process to think of what to work on, what to bring out most efficiently. All right, so quick summary. Since this is a lifelong learning type of environment, educational, I want to give you some takeaways, some conclusions. One, think of innovation as a leap in customer value. It really will expand your horizons, open the scope of the types of projects you can assign in-house. If it is a leap in customer value, well, it seems like the right starting point is understanding your customers richly and in depth. And so use various qualitative methods for doing so. And then another, I think, a very interesting takeaway is this idea of creativity isn't necessarily a gene that some of us are born with and some aren't. It's a process that you can actually teach and give to your employees. It can be studied. It's an outcome of a lot of work. So Drucker wrote, "Innovation is work," and the kinds of things we're doing is we're teaching people what the actual work is for producing new products. So with that, I'll give the floor. Oh, we have Q&A. I tend to give the floor back to John too early. But are there any questions at all? Yes?
Has there been any thought in recent months and years to adding considerations of recyclability and energy efficiency to your master list of product value considerations?
Yeah, one of the general categories was environment, and so yes, that's been in there, and it depends, of course, on the match of customers. As far as I mean, International Trucks investment has been in green diesel technology. In the interior, our focus will be on appropriate materials that wouldn't harm the environment. All right. So that is one of the characteristics. As always, pragmatically, there's a cost balance. Yes?
You mentioned that International is filing for some patent protection. Does that mean they own this IP, or are they doing it on behalf of the university?
No. Our agreements are somewhat unusual for this class.
That's why I asked, because it sounds different.
So what we've done is we've given, our university lawyers have hammered out the agreements with the companies so that the companies have had first rights of refusal. They have between 6 months and a year to apply for the patents. If they refuse, then the IP would revert back to the university. But yes, we've given that to corporations to decide to pursue. Yes.
Beyond academic research, have you given thought or come up with a solution to how do you adequately compensate talented, innovative staff workers who create an idea that becomes a very lucrative product, and you want to treat them fairly and honestly and ethically for that product development? Have you touched on that idea at all yet?
Now I would put that, no, I haven't personally.
Yes.
There is work done more on the management policy side of creating, that I would think of that as creating the right incentives of public policy, that world. I've been looking on the process and the tasks, but not policy side of this system. Good question. And I don't know the answers. Sorry, yes.
You showed the, I think you called it the value opportunity analysis. Is that something that you talk more about in one of your books or one of those books?
In both the books. So in the book that I co-wrote is Chapter 9. Well, Chapter 9 goes through a detailed example, the New Balance example I went through, and maps over each of those. And then the original book, Creating Breakthrough Products, a whole chapter, I think it's Chapter 3, carefully defines and helps apply that definition. Each of these are given a very general definition that would apply across services. So they're not tailored, and the first step is to tailor them, and it gives, I think, about 4 examples, diverse examples on applying these to B2B products.
Seems like a very useful tool. I hadn't seen that tool before.
That's the heart. It's amazing what that can do, because that connects the needs of the customer with the deliverables of the product, the qualities. And yes, that's the very heart of the process. And it's comprehensive. It's broad to help make sure you're not leaving something out. It's a nice competitive tool. We've done a similar tool with brand strategy to think about where can the company we're working with compete in terms of the utility that it's offering. Yeah, I agree. It's exceedingly useful.
We used tools in the past, like the House of Quality, where we try to convert the voice of the customer into the technical requirements. But that is just so labor intensive that the engineers and designers along the way just kind of lose interest. It seemed like your tool was a bit easier to apply, maybe.
It is, and as John Kagan and I give seminars, we'll spend a day on the value opportunity analysis and working sessions with a company, and that's the item in this whole process which resonates most strongly with the companies. Yes. Yes.
You showed the New Balance year. That year, New Balance was coy, and they didn't really sign up right away. You reached out to 3 Pittsburgh companies, but then New Balance came back. And I think the message we got in Pittsburgh was that you really rather work with big national companies and class projects than mid-sized Pittsburgh companies.
I'm sorry? Our current software company is a local company, and our upcoming Dormont Manufacturing is going to be our sponsor for IPD, which we turned down a national company to work with Dormont.
Okay.
So sorry that we gave the wrong impression.
Have you been working with since then?
So Dormont Manufacturing is our sponsor for the upcoming year. If you know Dormont, its main product is a tube, a pipe, which sounds like, wow, are we going to assign our students to work with a pipe? And theirs is a blue color, the blue tube. Now we're going to create a yellow one. So no, they've given us, luckily, a commercial kitchen to work with. So our students are going to be thinking about the commercial kitchen of the future, redesigning that as an environment to allow Dormont to innovate and fit their products into. Yes?
When you talk about studying customers, I mean, are you talking about, I think in this case you're talking about end users. How about like the distributors? Because it depends on where you are in the supply chain. Your customer could be the distributors, although they eventually sell to the customers.
Good
So
point.
how much focus do you give for like your distributions, and in terms of if you give both a focus, how do you balance those two?
Right.
In terms of your product development.
In our particular, the examples I gave here, the end customer, the user, was dominant. In other industries, B2B, like our current software work we're doing is with a company that designs software to manufacture printed circuit boards. So this is a highly refined. It's electrical engineers, mechanical engineers. There's the product manager. There's multiple stakeholders. And so one of the other tools I didn't show is a whole stakeholder map. And we have 2 different ways to examine the various stakeholders and their roles. And then we end up doing a VOA for multiple stakeholders and looking at the conflicts that might occur and try to reconcile and balance some of the competing objectives of the various stakeholders. So then if we take the word and relax it from customer and think about adding value to our stakeholders, then it all maps over nicely. Other questions? All right. Thank you. Thanks for coming this morning. Or one more.